but I knew I'd reached a fork in the road.
Yes.
I couldn't continue with the volumes of work that I had as a lone wolf or with just a few tutors. I needed a leadership team. I needed support.
Yes.
I needed to bring on those partnerships that would alleviate my load so that I could actually identify what I love to do and focus on that.
Welcome to the Ron Huntley Leadership Podcast, helping leaders be a positive catalyst on the people they support, the organizations they serve, and the communities they live. This podcast will make you think, laugh, and grit your teeth with new determination to make your parish or business a place of transformation, passion, and purpose. If you're still breathing, you are powered for impact.
Welcome back to the Ron Huntley Leadership Podcast. I am your host today, Ron Huntley, and with me in the studio today is the CEO and founder of Westbrook Tutoring, Nicole Gilbert. Welcome to the show, Nicole.
Hello, Ron. Thank you for inviting me.
It's a lot of fun to be able to dive into leadership topics from all kinds of venues. Of course, normally I'm speaking about parish renewal and leadership within the context of the clergy and leading out of teams. But I often find so often those principles are equally relevant within the business world. And so it's going to be fun to break open with you the type of work that you're doing in your ministry, in your business as a tutor. And so it's going to be fun. Yeah.
I've been looking forward to it. So thank you.
You're welcome. Tell me a little bit, or tell our listeners a little bit about how you got into tutoring anyway. Like, what was it about your upbringing or your desire as a young person that took you in the area of education and tutoring?
I was raised in a very ardent Christian family. Christian principles were instilled in us as children from a very early age. We had to study the Bible with our mother every morning and every night. And in addition to that, my father was a professor of medicine, and specifically internal medicine. And my mother actually was one of his students. So she also was a physician. And then we were sent to private school. So not only were the tenets of strong Christian living upheld before us, but the importance of a very solid education. And my dad's adherence to those beliefs was visible in the teams of students that would be seen following him in the hospital corridors. So.
I bet. Now, I know a little bit about your father because you've shared it with me before, but your dad was awarded or recognized with a distinct award. Can you tell us a little bit about that, and maybe a little bit about your dad's impact and legacy on you as a teacher and as a learner?
Yes. My father was awarded the Order of Canada in 1997, about 12 years before he passed away. And at that time, I didn't maybe even really appreciate or understand what that really meant. But as I have grown in the industry of education and begun to understand the importance of the passion and the compassion and the heart that's involved in being a good educator, and in my father's case, a professor, I've begun to understand what that accolade really meant. And the country literally recognized his contribution in the field of education and clinical medicine with this very tall order. And so I remember seeing that lived when I reflect back on that and how much Dad was devoted to his students. And it's pretty cool, very cool.
That's beautiful. So it sounds like just even in the crucible of your family, that education and Christianity were really, I guess, hallmarks of your upbringing.
Those were cornerstones. Full stop.
Full stop. Love it. And so, at what point did you decide to? Did you always want to be a tutor? Did you always want to be a business person running an organization of tutors, or is that something you evolved into? Tell me a little bit about that.
I always wanted to teach.
Okay.
And in fact, I found an autobiography that I had written in my university career. And in it, I stated these words as a 19 or 20-year-old that I wanted to really make a difference to the teaching profession in Canada. And I had no clue what that would look like, but I did have the desire. What actually got me into tutoring was being flat broke as a student and looking for ways to have more options for what I could put into the grocery cart. And so it seemed obvious that maybe if I just picked up a few students here and there, that would alleviate that problem that really bothered me.
You love to cook, you love to buy nice ingredients. And
yeah. That simple. Actually, it was grapes that I really wanted.
I love that. It's funny what can motivate us at times. So education was something that you were pursuing. Tutoring was something that you sought out to make some extra money to help maybe the lifestyle that you were hoping to live, at least around the dinner table with your family.
Yes. So really a very simple motivation. But behind that was a really strong passion for the role of a good teacher and a good mentor.
I love that. So at what point, like, how many tutors do you have working for Westbrook Tutoring now?
I have 18.
18. And so that's a business. Like, that has grown from getting some grapes and a little bit extra spending money to actually helping employ other people make a difference in the lives of young people. At what point, do you remember hiring your first tutor, bringing on your first tutor?
I do, and that would be about 5 years ago only. Until that point, I had played the full role. And he was actually one of my students originally.
One of your former students that you tutored became a tutor, and that's when your business started to grow, probably about 5 years ago.
Yes.
And how long have you been involved with tutoring?
30 years.
30 years. So Westbrook's 30 years old, but 5 years ago things started to transition from just you to bringing other people on board.
Yes.
What was that like for you?
At the time, I was a bit afraid because it meant letting go of some control, which I hold to quite tenaciously, and I figured I had to do that. Yeah. But I'm discovering it was the smartest thing I did.
Neat.
Yeah, and I had lots that I could learn from even very young people that were working for me.
Beautiful. And so what impact, well, I guess before I go there, I want to ask, like, so to go from 1 to 18, that's significant. And I know in the world that I coach into with parishes, as parishes begin to look at to dream about a better future, a bigger impact, oftentimes priests realize very quickly they'll never get there on their own. They can't do it by themselves. There's only so much they can do. I'm guessing as a business owner whose primary passion was education and influencing the next generation, I'm guessing you've had to evolve. You mentioned having to give up some control with hiring one person. What have you learned about yourself as you've gone from having one tutor to 18 tutors? How do you find yourself evolving?
Well, instead of being a lone wolf and just marching to my own beat, I have learned I'm trying to learn how to play the role as a leader within a team.
Yeah.
And like the students that clung to the hems of my father's pants, literally, I have a body of tutors that really hang on me, and it's a lot of fun. It's really invigorating, and they're excited about what their impact is and wanting to model it after that of myself. So
that's an interesting evolution. As I hear you talk about that, I'm thinking your primary passion was probably influencing these young people and their attitudes and towards education and learning and the results that they would get in that pursuit. And then you add on to that the opportunity to mentor and invest in a group of tutors who are also sharing that passion of influencing the next generation. It's almost like a whole other layer of influence and opportunity has been, you've grown into that as a business leader.
Absolutely. And what the tutors are looking to me for is completely different than what the students are looking for. And yet, in both cases, there's a real desire to listen and understand and grow from both groups.
Yes.
And so I feel empowered, I feel grateful, but I also feel humbled.
That's nice.
Mm-hmm.
How, share with me, because you don't stay in a field for 30 years and go from just yourself to 18 other tutors impacting lives without strong values. What values would you say have defined how you tackle this field of tutoring and education?
I would say the first and foremost is the value of integrity, because that encompasses many different pieces to the business. And if it's not there, it will fail or would have failed.
Sure.
And so integrity in terms of the seriousness with which I take on the mandates that my clients give me. And that, in my mind, just describes the discipline and the focus the conscientious focus that I give each of those mandates individually. And that takes integrity of purpose. I have to be who I say I am, or I won't be able to drive that forward. Another one is reliability, and I've really sought to be a reliable investment in people's lives, and in particular, someone that parents could count on, and students, to be there as needed and as I have committed. And I've tried to embed that into the culture of the company itself. And another value I have is passion. I don't think anyone should take on this type of work without a real passion for students and for learning, because we're impacting those lives. And so if we're not ardently excited about what we're doing, we're spoiling it for them. And that's wrong. It's not integral.
It's fun because even as you said the word passion, your face lit up.
Likely.
So clearly that is something that burns in you. What would you say if somebody said, Westbrook, what does Westbrook do? How would you define that?
Westbrook develops long-standing rapport with families. And by that I mean well over a decade, easily. I've started with students when they're in grade 2 or 3, and I still have them in their early university years. And so that's a rapport. It's a rapport of trust. Human beings change, children change, needs change, family needs change. But I've always sought to be that very reliable rock in their life that they could depend on, and that as the kids grow and change and their needs change, I can supply that, if not through myself, through the people that I hire to meet those particular needs.
Love it. So Westbrook is an organization that builds long-standing relationships with families to impact student education, or how would you define that?
Yes. And not only that, but build that attitude towards education and towards success in these students. Because often students don't feel maybe that they can make it. And they look at their parents who are successful, and it seems like a tall order. I couldn't ever be my father, not a chance. But that's okay. We have to supply that building block in our students whereby they feel that their success is their best, and that's good enough. And that's all we expect, and that's what we celebrate.
That's wonderful. And so what's some of the impacts that you enjoy having? Like, what are some of the benefits that your clients have experienced? Share some stories of success, of impact that you've experienced in the work that you do with people and families.
Well, I really work with 3 groups of students. The one group are your very, very strong students who are looking for another % or 2. And that might sound like insanity, but that's the hardest 1 or 2% that a student could ever hope to achieve, to go from a 97% to a 99%. But in the competitive world in which we live, and the demanding careers that a lot of these students are pursuing, that 1 or 2% is all the difference. And so that's a big impact. If we can help that student achieve that, we're the best. Another group, and maybe a very interesting group, are the underperforming but competent students. Right. And it's very fun for me to pick those kids out and to work with their attitudes and to shift their mind so that they own their success and they recognize that it could be there and that they're in the driver's seat of that. And their commitment, taking a complete change, will drive that success to a reality. And then I take the students that simply struggle, and they're adorable, because we're not looking for huge grade improvement, but just to bring out the best in them.
Right. Yeah, I guess not everybody's going to be hardwired academically to get these 90s.
Not a chance.
And there's some families that, they just see the capacity in their kids, the genius in their kids. It just doesn't necessarily mean reading and writing. And then you have to help them get through school. I remember a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And he wrote a book, Rich Kid, Smart Kid. And there's a lot of really neat principles that talked about this idea that every kid, every child has a genius. Mm-hmm. Some of them it's social, some of them it's physical, it's sports, some of them it's building things or fixing things. Like there's all different types, and the school system is really oriented towards reading and writing. And for some people that's going to be a challenge, but they can still have a successful life. Wouldn't you agree? Absolutely.
And the school system is set up to reward those who are capable of producing this glossy transcript, which in some ways is too bad, but we do try to zero in on the fact that I believe, as the owner and founder of this company, that every student has their own genius, and also that the student's best is their excellent, and that's good enough.
Right. That's neat. And so when you're coaching or teaching into these students that are coming to you, like how often do they come to you? How often do you teach them? Does that vary from mandate to mandate? What kinds of mandates do you find yourself taking on from parents?
They're as varied as there are clients on my roster. But one of the growing mandates is where typical scenario is both parents are professionals, highly engaged in their careers, want to come home and enjoy coming home at night with their children, not have to then begin the arduous process of going through their homework and making sure that things are completed in a timely fashion and with excellence. And so I have clients who literally hand me that mandate. And so maybe there's 2, 3, or more children, and I'm responsible to make sure that each of those children has the support that they need in each of the subjects. And that can be quite comprehensive because we have sciences, we have humanities, we have kids in high school, kids in junior high, and I don't believe that one tutor can cover all of that. I hire tutors and assign them to students according to very specific subject need. And so I'll have a chemist work with a grade 11 or grade 12 in chemistry. And that way I'm getting the very best for that student. So that's a big one because that's a tall order, a big mandate, a lot of trust on the part of those parents. Then there's sort of 2 or 3 times a week where it's kind of like a back-end support and students can save their questions and things they're struggling in for myself or whoever else is on the team to help that student.
Right.
And then there's the once a week, which is my minimum, an hour a week. And if a student is really strong and carving their own path and doing really well, sometimes that's enough, but that's a really small percentage of what we do.
Okay. So minimum 1 hour a week, small percentage. A lot of these students end up adding time into that connection with Westbrook, and then as needed, these specialists that come alongside to make sure that they get the maximum impact. You bring up a good point. I can't help but imagine that, we do pretty much live in a two-income world. Both husband and wife are working, and that must be challenging because it is tough. Like if you're not really enjoying school, I can only imagine the pushback parents get, and they're exhausted and tired, and to be able to, if they're in a position to be able to partner with Westbrook for that probably takes some stress off them, probably helps with the family life, I would imagine.
I've been told that by numerous clients, that to have that piece taken care of is, the same as anything else that people hire out, whether it's their groundskeeping in their yard or, maintenance around these homes, large homes, etc. There isn't the time. And so the same, applies to the children's education, really following that closely and making sure that T's are crossed, I's are dotted, pardon the pun. That's a big job, and especially with multiple children.
Right.
And so we also hope that through the work that we do, that we're alleviating stress in the home. And sometimes there's differing of opinion between father and mother. Mother's maybe a little softer in her approach, father's a little more hardcore, and now mom and dad are fighting over this.
Right.
And so if I can take that role, and I'll even take over communicating with teachers, like Westbrook will do that, according to the mandate of the parent, they don't have to worry about it.
Right.
And then I will sift right down to the kernel at what they need to hear about.
Love that. Yeah. And so what I'm hearing in this as I listen to you, and again, as I superimpose that over my world in leadership and parish renewal, is that you started as the chief cook and bottle washer. When it was burgeoning and small, you did everything. But if you were going to grow, you were going to have to change the way you led. You're going to have to bring new people on board, probably as specialists as generalists in the beginning, but it sounds like as the longer you grew with your clients, the more specialized they became, their needs changed, and you had to start bringing in specialists. And so how you saw yourself, how you serviced your business had to grow if you were going to continue to bring value to the students and the families that you were in partnership with. Because it sounds like you work with these families for 10 plus years sometimes. And so you had to evolve, your business had to evolve. And then as a result of that, how you lead has been evolving. So it sounds like you've been on a learning curve yourself as a business owner, out of care for these students and families. The whole thing's evolved. It's exciting.
It's very exciting. And actually, for a few years now, I've wondered what it meant when I heard a middle-aged person say, sometimes you just feel like reinventing the wheel. And I think that has come for me in exactly this way, that the business has grown and grown far beyond what I imagined or even set out to do. I just wanted to have freedom in the grocery store. And so with that, in order to keep it going and keep the momentum, I've had to bring in help and support. Yes. And that has created the need in me to define core values, define goals. Where am I going? What do I do anyway? What have I done? What has worked? What hasn't? What is the niche that I serve? And all of those are really answerable. But I had never really sat down and gave the introspection that was due.
Right. Yeah. So there's that whole introspection process. At what point do you feel that really began to kick in?
Probably in the last year.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Turned 50 and decided I can't continue to do all this anymore for whatever reason. This is just this. I need to change something. And that was to bring in help. But then I had to be able to articulate to the people I was bringing on beside me, well, who am I?
Right. And
what do I do? So, because they can't, take on the culture of what I have tried to create if I can't define it for them?
It's neat because I'm guessing you would have had a choice. Like you say, at 50, this grew in some ways by accident. It continued to grow, to continue to keep up with your mandates and the parents and the students you loved so much. You continued to evolve for them, and it got to a point where probably there was a lot to manage, and you had a neat choice. I don't know, but I'd say any business owner can say, either I'm going to sell it, I'm going to turn it over to somebody, I'm going to get smaller, or I'm going to embrace this opportunity and evolve so that I can grow my impact. That sounds like, to me, the choices you would have had to face, and I would think any business owner, any priest, or any bishop for that matter, is going to have to come to that place from time to time and say, recognize this is hard. Mm-hmm. And what am I going to do with hard? Right. Am I going to give it away? Am I going to quit? Am I going to get small? Or am I going to evolve and be the person, to be the leader that I need to be, or this movement needs to be? It's a choice.
It is a choice. But I knew I'd reached a fork in the road.
Yes.
I couldn't continue with the volumes of work that I had as a lone wolf or with just a few tutors. I needed a leadership team. I needed support.
Yes.
I needed to bring on those partnerships that would alleviate my load so that I could actually identify what I love to do and focus on that.
Right, and what you're best at.
And what I'm best at.
And to give up some control, and not even control, but responsibilities that you would have taken ownership of, to begin to figure out which of those that you can give away and where. And that's hard. Again, all leaders go through that rendering process that, what am I best at for the sake of this movement and team, and what do I need to start giving away? And that giving away process can be hard. Did you find that, like, at different points?
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I was really aware, Nicole, don't micromanage.
Right.
You would hate if some client stood over you when you're working with their student. You would feel that they didn't trust you, or
right.
They've hired you, but they don't trust you. How unbecoming. Don't hire me then. So same for the people who I've hired to support me in my work and my leadership role. I like to give them autonomy. I like to give them their space. Don't micromanage. And I want them to have fun. I want them to enjoy the freedom that they have to help me, and that I'm not going to stand over them and sort of cramp their style.
I remember, just recently being introduced to one of your tutors who seems to love Westbrook as much as you do. It seems like the passion that you have, the people that you've brought around you, share your passion, share your vision, share your values. How has that come to pass? Like, how have you been so blessed to bring around such talented and passionate people?
I think, Ron, people are attracted to people who are happy and passionate and care about what they do. And so human beings love positivity. It's like sitting down to a good meal. Like, have you ever seen a grouchy person sit down to a delicious dinner? No, people smile. This is exciting. And so people love to be around people who are happy, people who exude passion for whatever they're doing. And so I've discovered that, happiness is a great motivator. And when I work with my team and I show the passion that I have for students, it's almost contagious. And they can't help themselves. And I've had tutors that have quit other jobs because they just want to be more infiltrated by the culture of Westbrook. And so it's a win-win, because you put that in front of a student and the student feels it and they know. And so it's a way to the races.
Oh, I love that. And again, there's nothing you're sharing that isn't applicable to other businesses, nonprofits, the church world, building communities, turning things around. Attitude and culture is contagious. And there's some intentionality behind it that helps us to recruit amazing people. And so congratulations. When you look into the future, so you have 30-year legacy. Westbrook has a 30-year legacy of learning. When you look forward, what do you see? What's your dream?
My dream is that Westbrook becomes a brand, an exclusive brand, if it isn't already, that is known for the niche of clientele that we serve, our commitment. I want us to be that brand. And so when you hear the name Westbrook, you instantly know that you're talking about a support system for students of all ages, all abilities, bar none, and that support has longevity. It's got a massive amount of passion behind it and a culture that cannot be denied.
That's beautiful. That is wonderful. I appreciate you coming on today. I appreciate you sharing your passion with us and your specific interest in educating and influencing the next generation. You know, there's so much, again, of what you shared that we can apply to parish renewal and other people that are in business, lay people that are listening, that I think are going to be able to take some of these nuggets away and apply them to what they do. So, again, thank you and best of luck in all that you're doing to at Westbrook to have an impact in young lives.
Thank you, Ron. It's lovely to have been here and to share in something that I care very deeply about.
Wonderful. And so for those of you that have been watching and listening, thank you for your support. Thank you for the ways that you engage with rating the podcast if you're listening on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts. Thank you for watching on YouTube as we've come over to YouTube now. We really appreciate you subscribing, leaving comments. If there's anything that you're thinking to yourself, I would love to dive more into this particular area of leadership as it relates to business, parish renewal, whatever it is, we would love to help be a solution to the questions that you have. So again, thank you for listening. God bless you, and we'll see you next time.
I want to encourage you, as you lead this week, be faithful to God and generous to others. See you next time, and remember, if you're still breathing, you